false. So let's talk about ectopic pregnancies first. Let's do that one because I feel like I see that a lot. My brother actually sent it to me, a tweet to me about it. He was like, wait, is this true? I was like, it's not. So let me read to you the tweet and then we can discuss it. Sorry, 1 second. So this person says, just so we're clear, the pregnancy that ends up in the wrong spot, like the fallopian tube, the one that will never turn into a baby and will rupture and kill your wife, daughter, or sister, terminating that fetus is also an abortion, and they want to ban those too. So that's not true. Melanie, do you want to discuss it first? You want to?
Yeah, so the question of life of the mother, health of the mother, is a very common one. And I think what's happening right now with the misconceptions, with the tweets, the misunderstanding, this was exactly what was happening when the heartbeat law took effect in Texas. Like, we were hearing the exact same thing. So I think now we're just hearing the exact same things on a national level. People are saying these same arguments. So Live Action made a really cool graphic. I think today they posted it that It says ectopic pregnancy treatment does not equal abortion. Abortion is the intentional ending of an innocent human life. An ectopic pregnancy is when a preborn human implants outside of the uterus. So most of the time, that preborn human would then be implanting in the fallopian tube. And just fact is that women who are on hormonal contraceptives or birth control have way more likely to have an ectopic pregnancy than women who are not on hormonal contraceptives, because one of the methods to prevent a new life from implanting is by slowing the movement of the fallopian tube. So that would then unintentionally, unintentionally cause a preborn human to stay in that fallopian tube. So if that new human were to continue growing, and we know that if that fallopian tube keeps growing with the possibility of rupturing and causing hemorrhage, bleeding internally in that woman, a pro-life solution would be to remove that tube outside of the woman, allow for that preborn human to die by unintentional means, because the purpose of removing the tube was to intentionally save the life of that woman, with the unintentional cause of that preborn human dying. But it wasn't an abortion, which is intentionally ending the life of a preborn human. So that is a pro-life solution that I've heard of. That's a possibility. And I always say, a good doctor is going to save as many lives as possible. A good doctor is going to help both mom and preborn child. So I don't know about you, abortion advocate, but that's the doctor I want taking care of me and my preborn child. So that's just something to consider. The science shows that women, even if they have one fallopian tube, they can still get pregnant. They still have their fertility. So it's not a fertility loss. So that is an alternative, an answer that you can give to those.
She has a dog. That's the dog.
Yeah, it's my doggy Manolo right now. Yeah, that's an answer you can give to those who are saying, well, if we make abortion illegal, what about women whose lives are at stake, the women who are having ectopic pregnancies? Another thing to consider that I learned of recently is that, imagine, the place where new life is supposed to be implanting is in the uterus, is in the endometrium, that uterine lining that we shed every month when we were not pregnant. That lining that builds up every month is there for the sole purpose of a new life implanting, to give that new life nutrients and a home, essentially, and that then later becomes the placenta. So if a new life is if that preborn human is in the fallopian tube and didn't even make it to where they're supposed to be, sometimes that preborn human is already dead. So then sometimes women who miscarry have what we know as an abortion procedure to remove the already dead baby. So, for example, the Texas heartbeat law, other places with similar laws aren't stopping procedures to remove an already dead preborn human. So same thing with an ectopic pregnancy. If that preborn human is already dead, it's not an abortion. It's simply removing the, sadly, tragically, already dead human life. So some things to consider, some things to say in response when you hear that next time. I know it's trippy, it's a hard thing to navigate, but again, I just always fall back on, I want the doctor that's going to save the most amount of lives and sees mom and baby as two patients, as equals.
Yeah, that's a perfect description. Jerry, do you want to add anything?
Well, it's hard to follow up behind that, but
I know. I'm like, what else can we add?
yeah, but I like to always just emphasize that it's not an exception. Like we know to be truth that we are human from the moment of fertilization or conception. And I firmly believe with medical advancements and technology, at the pace that it's advancing, that we will have procedures that would be able to maybe reimplant the embryo from the fallopian tube into the correct place in the uterus. Until we get to that point,
that'd be interesting.
Melanie is absolutely correct. That nowhere that I've seen, even nationally, and I don't think any of the national groups or other state groups take that position that outlaws all abortions in that regard. And we need to be making it very clear that the argument that these folks are using is to try to make it justified to do the other 97% of abortions, which is elective.
Mm-hmm.
And, the majority of it is reasons people give is because of, financials or not good in terms of situations. It's nothing remotely even close.
Life.
So they're trying to play the emotional card. And I just want to remind your listeners to just be strong and don't really, buy into that because, they're just playing into that to try to shame folks. And to be honest, it's just because they're not educated in the issue themselves. They're just basically regurgitating talking points that they hear that the abortion lobby is trickling down. They're really good at that, and it's not good. But yeah, that's
what do you call the abortion complex? What do you call it? The abortion complex? What do you call it now?
Abortion industrial
complex. Yeah.
I want to add to that what Jerry said of, yes, it is an emotional card, but also it's a real card.
Mm-hmm.
So I do take the time, like when you're dialoguing, acknowledge, say, I agree with you. That's a really difficult scenario if a woman's in that. Agree, acknowledge that that's real and that's hard. And then you can respond with the talking points that I shared a moment ago. And then you can get back on the topic of the other 97% of abortions. Yeah,
I think what you both said is right on. And I'm just going to reiterate it so I can say something, so I can talk. But I think it is an emotional topic. And especially when we're talking with women, we also do want to show compassion when we're talking about it. We also want to make sure we're doing facts. And like Jerry said, they're kind of just regurgitating what they have heard the abortion industrial complex say. One thing I loved about what Melanie talked about is she talked about the scientific part. And let's be honest, none of us learned that in school. I don't care what school you went to.
Nope.
Maybe if you were homeschooled, your parents were very comprehensive about that. None of us learned that in school. Tons of people listening. And you know what? Some of my friends that are Christian, that grew up Christian in a bubble as well, that are now kind of pro-choice. You didn't learn this in school. All we learned, egg, sperm, baby, and don't do it. That's all we learn. So when you do more research, when you're learning more about fertility and about women's bodies, you can have these type of conversations, and that was such an intelligent response, because you also just gave facts. You spoke facts. It was, you talked literally about what happens. And I doubt if you were to have that conversation, it's hard to say all that in like a Facebook post. So it's going to be hard to say all that with like online, but when you have that conversation with someone in real life, I think it's good to know these things. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
No, it's true. And sadly, I mean, the pro-abortion people who are saying these things, what about ectopic pregnancy? They're not thinking about what I just said of, if the preborn human is supposed to be in the uterus, are you sure it's alive most of the time if it's in the fallopian tube? So it's just not all the time that human is alive in that part of the body where it wasn't supposed to be. So people they're not thinking about that.
No, they're just sharing graphics on Instagram, and that's